Hello, this is astrologer coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in almost 5 degrees of Gemini, which will be exact on May 25th at 3:44 p.m. Eastern Time, which is also New York time in the US, and 12:44 p.m. West Coast time in the US, which is also LA time. And this new moon is not only the beginning of a new moon cycle, it's also a supermoon. And supermoons occur when the moon becomes either new or full, doesn't matter which one, but it's at its closest distance to the Earth, and therefore the lunation is more powerful. And so it generates greater gravitational and electromagnetic forces, and therefore it increases the effects on our physical, mental, and emotional bodies. And so this in turn facilitates greater shifts in consciousness that we can experience during these next 4 weeks. So since the new moon is an introverted time that asks us to go within and get in touch with what we want to create for the next 4 weeks, I will also talk about the best and most potent times to set new moon intentions at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. But for now, I want to mention that this new moon has 2 T-squares and 1 Yod and 1 grand Trine. So there's a lot going on in this new moon chart. So this really increases our need to expand our vision for what's possible for the next 4 weeks, especially since Jupiter is involved in one of those T-squares and is also the focus point of that Yod. And so I will talk more about that in a moment, but first, let's look at Gemini and what that energy represents with this supermoon, right? And so the new moon in curious, quick-witted, chatty, versatile Gemini is definitely asking us to connect to other people and to share our little hearts out for the next 4 weeks. And so this is definitely a busy time, very busy, where we love multitasking and communicating and collecting information and sharing. And so we're really invited to look at our mental programming and conditioned mind to see what needs to go and what needs maybe new thought structures in our lives, and so we can create new things for ourselves. Now, Gemini is always asking us to stay in movement because it wants to, the thoughts and the thinking and the mental processes are always in movement, right? And to think about what we need to know in order to move forward. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself with this new moon energy, right? What is my mind saying to me about what I value? And what do I desire most right now? And what's my inner dialogue about that? So with all these questions that I always pose in my videos, feel free to meditate on them, to journal on them, or to just simply allow yourself to marinate in these questions as you go through these next 4 weeks, and allow to have these questions in the background. Maybe not all of them, but some of them as you can, and maybe even re-listen to the videos or to my weekly blog, right? And that brings me to saying that, these questions that I have in these videos are available on my website at astrologercoach.com via my weekly forecasts after May 21st, that will be posted. But you can also sign up for them to receive them via email if you subscribe to my weekly forecasts. Just send an email to info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecasts in the subject line, and my assistant will add you to that mailing list. All right? Now back to the new moon. The spiritual goal of Gemini is the development of perception, thought, and communication, right? So new connections are created in the brain all the time whenever there's a new thought or a memory coming up. And so the more we think a particular thought, or the more we think about a particular memory, for example, those pathways in the brain get deeper and deeper and deeper, right? For those of you who have watched What the Bleep, you probably remember that from that movie. But what you can ask yourself for these next 4 weeks, what mental routes do I keep heading down that actually no longer serve me? So what are some of the thoughts that you keep thinking over and over and over again, or that you keep going to, memories or just familiar thoughts that have always been there and that keep coming up over and over again? and just look to see which one of those are no longer serving you, or they're not really supporting you in your current life, right? And then also ask yourself, what thoughts am I attached to that are based on material safety rather than knowing my own self-worth? And this is a very powerful question because Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, is in Taurus at the time of this new moon. So, the Taurus energy is about material safety. It is about our self-worth. So sometimes when we don't feel worthy or when we don't feel connected to what our worth is, we tend to cling more to material safety, or we tend to cling more to needing to have things in our lives rather than just knowing that the value is within ourselves. It's not about what's outside of us that we're connecting with, or that we're collecting. It's more that the inner value is more what really counts. So ask yourself that question, right? What thoughts am I attached to that are based on material safety rather than knowing my self-worth? And again, feel free to meditate or journal on those questions or marinate in them. You don't need to answer them right away, right? Now, let's talk a little bit about Mercury in Taurus, which is what's going on at the time of this new moon. This invites us to set healthy boundaries for ourselves. We're ready to speak up about anything out of alignment with our core values. And so perhaps maybe also a little bit more quickly than we mean to. So it's about sort of like speaking a firm no when it is the loving thing to do for ourselves. And that's really the key, right? It's not about saying a no just out of principle or out of fear or out of, what we're used to saying no to, but it's really more about asking ourselves, can I say a firm no when it's really the loving thing for me to do? When it serves me, when it serves my sense of peace, my sense of, love towards myself, honoring myself, right? Then is it important for me to say no to something, right? And just remember that saying no is it's exactly the same as saying yes. It's just that it has a different effect and that it has a different consequence, right? Saying yes or saying no is really the same, just that we're sometimes more comfortable with saying one more than the other, right? Some of us are more comfortable with saying yes. Some of us are more comfortable with saying no, right? So just know that it's the same. It just depends on what results are you really wanting to get, and what's the loving thing in terms of honoring yourself, right? So when it comes to learning something, since Mercury is all about learning, right? We definitely prefer demonstrations with Mercury and Taurus. We prefer concrete answers, something that's based in real world or in practical uses, right? We prefer basic concepts, something that's earthy, down to earth. And we learn best when we see the real world uses of our theories or what it is that we're trying to understand. Or absorb. And so simple processes are important as well, as far as how we process our information. And also what's really helpful with Mercury and Taurus is personalizing things, understanding how does that relate to me, or how can I use this information, or what use is it to me, right? Those are all things that we're probably going to be asking ourselves quite a bit with Mercury and Taurus. Now, Jupiter in Libra is currently the focus point of a Yod, like I mentioned already earlier, but it also involves Mercury in Taurus and Neptune in Pisces. So what does that mean exactly? This Yod is actually not quite exact at the time of the new moon, but it will be exact shortly after the new moon. And so it invites us to move beyond limiting beliefs, especially around relationships or how we relate with other people, especially one-on-one. and connect us to a worldview that's more aligned with our heart and with our values, and a perspective that creates the possibility of harmony, balance, and peace in our lives. So, so this is really something where we need to kind of like focus on the perspective part and how we can expand our vision with other people. And there may be a need for adjustment here. You know, there may be a need for kind of like staying open-minded, staying adaptable, right? So we can make this work. Now, Venus, which is connected to that Jupiter in Libra placement, is in Aries at the time of the new moon. And this gives us an opportunity to really connect the mind and the heart and jump into the unknown with courage, initiative, and enthusiasm. Because Aries is very much about the newness of things and being courageous, you know, and having a lot of fiery energy when we're doing things, when we're connecting with other people. And also Venus in Aries invites us also to connect to ourselves in a very authentic way, right? Now, Venus also opposes Jupiter in Libra. So this is asking us to let ourselves be guided by our heart without obsessing about relationships or finances, to really understand, you know, like that, you know, we have our part to play and others have our part to play. And so since we're most likely very overly optimistic during this time with that Venus-Jupiter opposition, it might be best to find the balance between what we value in ourselves and what other people contribute to us. And so this is about simply allowing the heart to steer us in a direction that supports our relationships and ourselves, right? So it's not an either or, but that it's sort of like meeting in the middle, finding that middle path, right? And as I already mentioned earlier, this new moon chart also has two T-squares. The first one, or the most powerful one of the two T-squares, is the one with Pluto and Capricorn being the focus point. And Pluto is squaring Venus and Jupiter, right? So Venus and Jupiter are opposite, and then Pluto is squaring both of those. So it makes that T-square. So what does that mean, practically speaking, right? We have experienced similar T-squares like this since the end of last year, but Venus was not involved in those T-squares. It was Uranus that was involved in those T-squares. So with Venus now being involved here, we're invited to empower ourselves by connecting to our deepest, truest feelings about who we are and what we aspire to, especially when it comes to our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to others, and understanding our needs, especially our need for safety, right? Now, on a social level, this means that we could have intense social connections with other people, or a need to have some transformative or very powerful social interactions with other people. And it's time to really let go of destructive attachments and connections to others, or even something that's connected to ourselves. Anything that feels destructive right now that we're still attaching to, we need to kind of release that and surrender to a more open-hearted approach. So ask yourself with this T-square, how can I grow and evolve in my relationships? And is there a relationship in my current life, whether that's business or personal, that I need to grow and evolve out of, that's no longer serving the purpose that it served in the past? Or maybe is there a relationship, business or personal, that needs deepening and that needs sort of like a turning point or a transformation so that I can go to the next level with that relationship, right? So we're definitely invited to stretch towards a more authentic and empowered society also with this aspect. A society that honors our contributions, our own personal contributions, and one that's capable of owning its fears and less attractive characteristics. So we're really also, again, being invited to go more into these shadow parts and these places that maybe feel a little uncomfortable, and places that we're not readily want to embrace, but we need to be honest and authentic here and see like what's no longer working, what's toxic, what's dead, what needs to be, looked at and released or let go of, so that we can have a more authentic society, and that we can have a more powerful, a more empowering society. So the question here really is, how can we do this? How can we bring this about? How can we look at these shadows, whether that's in our society at large or also on an individual basis for ourselves? And of course, the best place to start, of course, is honoring ourselves, our relationships, and expressing our heart and our passions. So what would that look like for you at this time, and in what ways, small or large, doesn't matter, could you do that today? Just ask yourself that, just for today, what could I do to bring that about in my own life? I talk a lot in these forecasts about the power and the importance of self-care. And I think once again with this T-square, it's worth our attention because the empty leg of this T-square is in Cancer. And so we're once again reminded to powerfully nurture ourselves, especially our feeling body, and to open up to receiving support as much as possible from the people we trust and people who are familiar to us. So as best as you can for the next 4 weeks, take breaks, slow down a little bit, and allow your mind to relax as much as that's possible. And it is important to explore ways to stay centered and grounded, right? So seek tools or people as best as you can to help you with that exploration, right? So any form of meditation is going to be helpful. Walking, nature, breathing exercises, practicing being in the here and now with our physical body, with our emotional body, that all of those things will empower us for the next 4 weeks. Now, the second T-square that I want to talk about involves Chiron in Pisces as the focus point. Chiron squares Mars in Gemini and Saturn in Sagittarius. And again, what the hell does that mean, right? Now, this T-square is building at the time of the new moon, so it's not quite exact yet, but it will be exact between May 29th and June 2nd. So this is really, again, a time to stretch and grow like all T-squares. And we're invited to release anything that no longer supports our inner growth, our inner spiritual growth, individually and collectively. Now, this Chiron placement definitely invites us to take a look at our own insecurities. This T-square also may bring up some restrictions at this time. And we might feel triggered by a person, by a place, by a situation that we're in. And this, of course, calls us to see more clearly our own limitations that we have in life. And that means that we really, when we're being confronted with our own limitations, it's very important to, first of all, to be open-minded and accepting around that, and to follow our inner guidance, on a daily basis, so that we can really embrace the limitations that we have, and so that we can also release any victim-based behaviors around this, right? Because just because we have limitations as human beings doesn't mean that there's something wrong, or that we're bad, or that we're that we need to fix it or change it right away, right? Or at all right? So there's really a need to kind of have more clarity around that, and to see it for what it is. And so this is definitely a challenge for us to heal wounds from the past as well. In particular, those wounds connected to our inner masculine energies, because Mars is involved in this T-square, right? And so when we deal with issues in regards to anger, when something comes up around anger, for example, we really need to ask ourselves, how do we manage our anger? How do we deal with our anger? How do we feel about our anger, right? Do we feel insecure about it? Do we feel ashamed about our anger? And then also, how can we bring love to that place of that place that we move with when anger comes up, right? And so we're definitely not serving ourselves or the collective if we are looking at anger as something that is wrong or shameful, right? But if we can look at it as something that we can bring love to, and also look to see, what's underneath the anger, why is anger even showing up, right? What's underneath that? And very often there can be fear that can be connected to anger, or a sense of, not moving in the right direction, or not being met in the right way by ourselves or by other people. And so we're experiencing a sensation, right? And that sensation we label anger, but there's a sensation that comes up. So how can we acknowledge that in a more peaceful, loving, kind way, that these sensations are there, right? And so slowing down will definitely serve us during this time of this T-square. Ask yourself during this time, what is my physical, mental health worth to me? And how can I embrace the pace that is required to heal and become whole, right? Sometimes we have to slow down in order to embrace more fully and understand more fully what's actually moving within us, what's currently going on within us, right? And so you could definitely say that we are at a turning point, with all these T-squares. And so we really need to realize more and more that humanity's evolution and survival really requires actions and attitudes that come from an open heart and a self-responsible attitude, this attitude that I am okay dealing with what's showing up. And I don't need to give away my responsibility for something. I don't need to, be the victim in this. I don't need to be blaming or shaming others or even myself, right? So there needs to be a willingness to make and allow mistakes, right? And if we can have that willingness, if we can really embrace making mistakes or allowing mistakes, then we can really have our own humanity shine through more fully, more beautifully, more from a heart space. And as we heal ourselves, because that's a healing process, right? Just allowing ourselves to embrace and come from the heart and understand and be compassionate. As we heal ourselves, we will heal the collective. Each individual being focusing on healing is in turn going to heal the collective. So as it's sort of like the microcosm and the macrocosm are connected. So everything that happens within ourselves also is going to happen outside of ourselves. And so rather than asking whose fault is it or who's to blame, acknowledge what is without judging it and ask yourself, where do I go from here? Now that I'm seeing what's actually so, and now that I'm taking responsibility and I'm accepting it, right, for what it is, where do I go from here? What could I learn from this? What do I want to create next? And where do I want to focus my energies? And that last question is very powerful and very important. Where do I want to focus my energies? That's really important, right? So as best as you can, be kind to yourself within this process. Remember that true healing comes from understanding, embracing, and definitely loving who we are deep down, right? So ask yourself, what would happen if I embraced my own humanity an extra 5% right now in this moment? And I know I've asked these questions before in other videos, but this is such a powerful question. It's so important, and it's very much connected to that Chiron placement, right, with that T-square. Now, given that the empty leg of this T-square lands in Virgo, we're invited to make healing choices from a place of neutral clarity, right? The highest vibration of Virgo really has to do with being neutral, having clarity, right? Rather than judgment, rather than going like, what's wrong here? Just allowing ourselves to see clearly what is, What is, observing, that observer mode, right, is very much Virgo. And what might I experience if I released all judgment towards my old wounds and my insecurities that I have in connection to these old wounds, right? What might be possible if I embraced my imperfections as actually perfect, right? What might be possible if I embraced my imperfections as actually perfect? Very powerful question, I think. And could I be kind and discerning at the same time? Because sometimes, discernment is definitely the very high vibration of Virgo, but sometimes we don't always have a lot of clarity around what discernment really is. Very often judgment comes in as well. But if we bring kindness to the process, then that judgment goes away, right? And so when we can allow ourselves to be kind and discerning, that's really the most highest vibration of Virgo, right? So rather than coming from a place of good or bad, right or wrong, which is that duality that the mind loves to spit up, right, and loves to move with, ask yourself, what works for me? What doesn't? What do I see when I look at whatever is occurring in front of me through a neutral lens, right? And what might I discover if I made a list of pros and cons around stuff? But from that neutral place, what's a pro here? What's a con? What would I like to, what does that mean for me? And what does that mean for me, right? If there's sort of like two choices that I'm looking at. And one other thing that's worth mentioning with this new moon chart, so we're almost at the end, is that grand trine between Uranus, Saturn, and the North Node, right? And so this grand trine is in the fire signs in Aries, Sagittarius, and Leo. And so this combo really provides a flow of inspirational, active, and passionate energies. And so we're able to really align ourselves with our current soul's journey in a very progressive yet responsible way, right? Uranus is progressive, Saturn is responsible, and the North Node is our soul's journey. And this is really supporting us in moving towards more joy and move more towards our soul's desire, which would be that North Node in Leo, right? So ask yourself, what is my heart's desire right here, right now? And what brings me true joy, right? What in my life brings me true joy? And what does it look like to walk my own path based on what I'm experiencing to be true for me right here, right now? Not connected to the past, but what's true right here, right now, right? And what might an authentic and unique expression of my own individuality be? And what needs progress in my life, right? So what needs a shift, a progress, a change, so that I can be more authentic and be more in my own unique self-expression. And also, if you want to know a little bit more about the North Node in Leo, for example, you might want to watch my latest forum that we just had, and we looked at the moon nodes that just moved into Leo Aquarius in relationship to our own birth charts. And, other than booking a reading with me, this forum is really a great level of support for you in connection to your own birth chart. It's only $24 for the 90-minute webinar. And if you want to purchase that recording of that webinar, feel free to go to my website at astrologercoach.com and click on the link next to services, which is below the Saturn in Sagittarius video on that page. And then just add the monthly forecasting forum to your cart. And once you've paid for it, I will send you the link to that recording. All right. To sum it all up for this new moon, because we're at the end now, we're definitely invited to stretch and grow this month. We're also invited to remain curious, open-minded, and adaptable for the next 28 days. So ask yourself, what thoughts and mental processes might be leading me into limiting places or lower vibrations? So just kind of allow yourself to pay attention to that. And you don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to judge it, or you don't have to punish yourself for that, but just observe it, right? Observer place, that Virgo energy. And how could I lovingly embrace my imperfections and limitations? And what about those of others, right? Other people, like, because we all have our imperfections, we all have our limitations, right? So how can we do it for ourselves? How can we do it for other people? And then also ask yourself, am I being impatient? You know, if you notice during the next 28 days, am I feeling impatient? Am I feeling antsy, right? And how might I support myself if I started to trust the divine timing of things 5% more, right? Very, very powerful question for the next 28 days. And also, you know, of course, with so many planets and points in mutable signs, we might feel a little restless and pulled in many directions. So it's definitely a time where we're going to feel very busy, but it also might bring up feelings of being ungrounded and overwhelmed a little bit at times. So ask yourself, you know, if you do feel ungrounded or overwhelmed, ask yourself, sit down, you know, put your feet on the ground, maybe close your eyes and just ask yourself, what feelings or sensations am I experiencing in this now moment? And could I allow myself to feel just that without attaching any meaning to it? Can I just allow myself to feel the sensations or the feelings that are currently going on within myself, within this physical being, right? And could I welcome what is? Could I welcome all those sensations, all those feelings right here, right now? And could I welcome all the sounds inside my head? You know, very often we feel a lot of noise that kind of goes on. And could I welcome that noise inside my head? And could I give myself permission to go beyond the mind, beyond the thinking, just for right now? And then could I rest in the awareness that I am, just for this now moment? And really allow yourself to feel into these questions, you know, and feel free to use these last several questions here at any time when you feel ungrounded, when you feel overwhelmed, you know, for the next 28 days. Really go back to this point in the video and listen to those questions again and really sit down and ask yourself these questions honestly and authentically. And be with yourself, right? Be with yourself in those moments. Now, if you do have an ascendant or any personal planets in 3 to 7 degrees of Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, or Pisces, you're definitely going to feel the effects of this new moon more fully than others. But even if you don't have personal planets in those degrees and signs, take a look at your birth chart and see what house placement this new moon falls in your natal chart, because that house or that area of your life is going to be impacted by this new moon energy for the next 28 days. So take a look, where is 5 degrees of Gemini in your chart? Where does that land? And what does that house or that area of life mean? What is it all about? How can you create healthy thinking structures in that area of your life? What do you need to share there? What do you need to look at in terms of your thinking or learning? What needs to be learned there in that area of your life, right? And if you don't have a birth chart and you don't know how to do that, then feel free to watch my video, How to Read Your Birth Chart. You can watch that either on YouTube, or you can also ask us to send it to you with some handouts. If you email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write recording in the subject line, my assistant will email that to you with some handouts. And at the end of that video, I talk about how you can get a copy of your own birth chart online for free. And it's also a really great video to watch before joining our monthly forecasting forum, so you understand how to apply what I talk about in my videos, what I talk about in my weekly forecasts to your own birth chart. So it's a very, very beautiful video to watch. And also I want to talk a little bit, before I talk about setting intentions, I want to briefly talk about my next monthly forecasting forum, what it's about. And also in general about my monthly forecasting forums, if you've never joined them. It's really the next best thing to do besides getting one-on-one readings with me. Because we will be looking at our own birth charts actively during these forums in relationship to the upcoming energies and how that is impacting us personally. And please remember, for the next forecasting forum that will be in June, there will be 3 planets stationing in June. And so that means they're going to be more exalted, these planets. Jupiter is going to come to a halt in Libra. Neptune and Chiron will station in Pisces to start going retrograde. So we will talk about this in more detail in the next forecasting forum, which will be on June 10th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, and 7 p.m. London Time. And so if you want to know how these energies will impact you at that time or during the month of June and beginning of July as well, then feel free to join us. You can sign up to join the webinar live or register for an MP3 video recording, which you will get within 24 hours of the live event. And again, besides doing a one-on-one reading with me, these really are the highest level of support that I offer, and it's only $24 for a 90-minute webinar. And you can register on my website at AstrologerCoach.com. And if you click on the link that leads you to the monthly forecasting forum page on my website, please also fill out the registration form as well as making your payment. The registration form is at the very bottom of that monthly forecasting forum page. And also feel free to ask questions in advance about these planetary movements, about Jupiter, about Neptune, about Chiron in your own chart and how that's going to affect you. Especially if you're not going to be able to join live, right? And I will do my best to answer as many questions as possible. Because it is a 90-minute webinar, I am sort of limited to that time. So whoever sends me their question first will definitely get answered first. And so send in your questions as quickly as possible. That's all. That's what I can say, and so that I can get to your question. And the moment that we've all been waiting for has come, because now we're going to be talking about our new moon intentions for this month. So set some powerful intentions for this new moon cycle. Intentions are best done right after the new moon becomes exact, not before. So you really want to do it after the new moon has become exact, and definitely not during a moon void of course phase. So for this month, the best and most potent time to set intentions would be between 3:44 p.m. on May 25th and 2:18 a.m., so very, very early in the morning on May 27th, okay? So, and all of this is Eastern Time, New York time. And if you aren't able to get to it during those time periods, give it another few hours on May 27th and try again between 7:25 a.m. and 3:44 p.m. on May 27th. That's another potent, beautiful time to set intentions, all right? Now, if you don't live in the New York time zone, if you don't live in Eastern time zone of the US, feel free to plug in these times and convert them into your own time zone wherever you live. But if that's too complicated for you, you don't want to do that, feel free to join me on my Facebook fan page or on my Twitter page. I will be posting reminders at the time when it's the best and most potent time to set these intentions. So if you follow me there and you see one of those reminders pop up, then just set your intentions at that time, right? I also have created some bonus questions that you can ask yourself while setting your intentions. And you can find those on my website at astrologercoach.com via my weekly forecasts after May 21st. But again, you can also sign up for my weekly forecast to receive them via email. If you email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecast in the subject line. All right. Now, for more information about setting new moon intentions, you can either find that on my Facebook fan page and in the notes section, which you can only get to from a computer. Unfortunately, that notes section can't be accessed from an iPhone or Android. But you can also access an article about setting new moon intentions on my website. If you go to my weekly forecasts, you click on that link and then look on the left side of that page. There is a link that says astrology articles. You click on that link and you will get to an article that talks about setting new moon intentions on my website. All right, so you can do that. And if you don't want to receive my weekly forecast, if you don't want to get emails that often, feel free to also sign up for my newsletter, which I send out approximately twice a month. By emailing us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line. My newsletter has always my special offers, my videos, my announcements that I make about my business or my courses or any retreats that I'm doing. Anything that I'm doing really will be in the newsletter. All right. Now, if you have any general questions about this new moon, feel free to email me at sonja@astrologercoach.com. If you have any personal questions, I will ask you to either book a reading with me on my website at astrologercoach.com or, connect with me via my monthly forecasting forums, because anything that is connected to what's coming up within the next 30 to 40 days, that's a personal question. You can ask me questions on my monthly forecasting forum and I will answer them there. All right. So that's it for this new moon. Remember, it's an introverted time. It's time to go within and to really get in touch with what we want to, the seeds that we want to plant for the next 28 days, right? So have a fantastic new moon, and I'll be in touch again in 2 weeks to talk about the next full moon. All right, have a good one. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis. Goodbye.